December 7th, 1941, the Japanese military launched a surprise attack on the United States naval base called Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Since early 1941, the U.S. had been supplying Great Britain in its fight against the German soldiers. It had also been pressuring Japan to halt its military expansion in Asia and the Pacific. After the attack of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. declared war on Japan's allies. The allies were Germany, Italy, and theirself, Japan. For the U.S., the allies were the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France. President during the attack was Franklin D. Roosevelt. The attack on Pearl Harbor lasted for only 1 hour and 15 minutes. The attack on Pearl Harbor led to us entering World War II. Instead of the planes being important, the Japanese submarines were supposed to play a major role in the attack. Before the attack, Japan could have inflicted greater damage if they targeted different areas of the U.S. Navy. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor a second time on March 4th, 1942, and what they called Operation K. They used two 4-engine naval flying boats nicknamed Emily by the Allies. It was somewhat like America's PBY. History will remind us that President Roosevelt in the United States had economically sanctioned and crippled the Japanese economy and the ability to wage war. Before the United States entered the conflict, the Japanese responded with an attack on Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. The Japanese celebrated this victory, but it is the specific moment that changes the course of the war in the Pacific and eventually causes the surrender of Imperial Japan, bringing an end to World War II. This project connects with frontiers in history because the bombing of Pearl Harbor changed the course of the World War. I would also consider it as a frontier in history. This changed the course, leaving thousands of soldiers dead. My first piece of evidence to show how this is true is history.com. This website shows that President Roosevelt weakened the Japanese. One of my websites that helped me write my thesis was History Naval. This website told me the amount of deaths in Pearl Harbor. It also told me the attack was a surprise attack. Another website was history.house. The website states on December 7th, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, addressing the nation in a joint session in the House chamber, asked Congress to declare war against Japan. In response to the surprise attack against American naval facilities in and around Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Roosevelt assured members of the Congress and the American people with confidence in our armed forces, with unbound determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. This website was good for information, but it was short. Another website helped me write my thesis is National World War II Museum. In early May 1942, the U.S. and Japanese carrier forces clashed in the Battle of the Coral Sea. While both sides suffered major loss, the U.S. Navy checked a major Japanese offensive for the first time. Then, in the Battle of Midway the following month, U.S. carrier aircraft dealt a devastating blow to the Japanese Navy. Destroying 4 aircraft carriers, the battle marked the first major U.S. victory against Japan and was the turning point in the war by shifting the balance of naval power in the Pacific. Midway allowed U.S. forces to take the offense for the first time. The Allies soon set their sights. It also states that President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on Japan and asked the Congress if he could. In Washington, December 8th, the United States was officially at war with Japan as Franklin D. Roosevelt signed a declaration of war Something that helped me write my thesis is an old newspaper that dates back to December 8th, 1941. One day later, the attack in the newspaper, the title of the newspaper is War Declared on Japan by the U.S. FDR calls attack upon Oahu, informs treachery, our fleet at sea as counter-offense is begun. Both houses of Congress passed resolution declaring that a state of war exists between the United States and Tokyo imperial government. This newspaper gives me a lot of good pieces to write for my thesis. Another piece of evidence of the damage was from an insider. The picture shows the naval base with smoke all around it. In another picture, it shows 3 naval bases on water with smoke coming out, with the planes flying in the air, which is most likely Japanese bomber planes that bombed the naval base. My topic matters because the attack on Pearl Harbor is important because the attack was the turning point of the war because the U.S. declared war on Japan and all of their allies. The allies were Germany, Italy, and Japan. 4 more years later, the U.S. and Great Britain and France and the Soviet Union led the end to Germany's leader and the war. Those 4 allies were the key to victory. This is historically important because it ended the worst war in U.S. history. It's also significant in history because if the U.S. didn't join the war because of Japan, more people would have died. Because of Japan, we entered World War II. But did you know that Japan could have weakened us more if they attacked somewhere else? Because Pearl Harbor wasn't the only big naval base in the United States at this period of time. Conclusion to my project is that Franklin D. Roosevelt had economically sanctioned Japan's ability to wage war. The Japanese was mostly bombed Pearl Harbor because the Japan had been waiting to wage war. The U.S. for years, and now they have found a chance because World War II was going on and the U.S. wasn't involved at this time. My conclusion to my project is that Franklin D. Roosevelt had economically sanctioned Japan's ability to wage war on the U.S. Japanese. They mostly bombed Pearl Harbor because Japan has been waiting to wage war the U.S. for years now. And they found a chance because World War II was going on and the U.S. wasn't involved at this time. So the Japanese saw this as a chance to attack first. After the attack, the Japanese celebrated, but at the time it was the turning point of the war. The United States of America waged war on Japan. They attacked one of Japan's cities with the first ever bomb to be used. At this time, that bomb weakened and sanctioned the military. History will remind us that President Roosevelt and the United States had economically sanctioned and crippled the Japanese economy and ability to wage war before the United States then entered the conflict. The Japanese responded with an attack on Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. The Japanese celebrated this victory, but it was this specific moment that changed the course of war in the Pacific and eventually causes the surrender of Imperial Japan, bringing an end to World War II. What I'm trying to prove is that history will remind us that President Franklin D. Roosevelt sanctioned the Japanese. I proved it during my project.